So with luxury, it's not about those vanity metrics as such. It's more about the intent over the volume. So we don't want thousands of random clicks just to have those metrics look impressive. We're actually looking for the people that genuinely want to spend that high level amount of money.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Paid Search NYC podcast. Today, very excited to be chatting to Janina Downey, who is a senior digital marketing manager in the luxury space. She works for a company called Jakarta Travel, which offer bespoke luxury trips. And we're going to be chatting a lot about paid search in the luxury space. I feel like luxury is one of those categories that doesn't necessarily always play by the same rules. So very excited to get into that. But before we do, Gina, welcome and thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, Matt. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Of course. So before we dive into it, we always like to start off with a little bit more about kind of your career journey and kind of the path you've taken up to the role you do today. So tell us a little bit more about what that looks like.
Okay, I guess casting back a bit, started out quite traditionally after completing a tourism management degree, which I did in the UK, did a graduate sales and marketing placement. So this was for a global hotel brand. And it was really great because I got to work really closely with lots of regional property directors across the country, lots of different managers across the kind of sales, marketing, but also operational space as well. So that was all across the country, but also mainly predominantly in the southeast of England. So it was a really good starting point for me. Lots of interaction with the kind of sales world, but then literally started out traditional, I'd say, print marketing. I have an uncle who's a printer, so that helped greatly with where I worked at the time. Good cost efficiencies there. Mainly around all of the great, fantastic visual collateral that people really like to have, that tangible element, working with graphic designers and traditional PR brand activation. So we did a lot of moving to the space of video and photo shoots, exhibitions and events. So it was a good variety to kind of start out in. But back then, a lot more paper and file organization. There was always that Christmas time of annual clear out the cupboards and put in the recycling bin. But then digital started to really, evolve and take hold, especially in that hospitality space, which was super exciting. So I was just there at the right time to really get knuckled down and really kind of threw myself into it. We had a digital director at the time that was, super into programming, coding and anything new and just, taking it on board. And I was always being kind of yo-yoed between the traditional marketer and doing those elements and the digital and splitting my time. But I really found the digital element super exciting and interesting. So I even taught myself HTML, coding, went to classes in London in the evening. So we actually built websites in-house. And just everything evolved from then. It was so exciting. So, Google AdWords, building out campaigns ourselves, social media obviously taking off, email marketing, like all these new channels and kind of ways of reaching new audiences sitting at our computer was just really great. And also we could see the results, and we could just do lots of test and learning. So it was really, really great. And obviously working for a hospitality brand, the visual element is just so fantastic. So you have a lot of assets to play with. So it was really fun, great learning curve. It's kind of where it kind of all started really and opened up to me going down that directory and really focusing on that element more so from the traditional marketing point of view. So that's really where data came into it, started to knuckle down into numbers, spreadsheet, and really utilizing that for all the decision making that we had within the department. But ultimately, I guess back then, mentors were just such a really good support and kept my interest, kept growing and growing and growing. I'd be super interested I used to attend lots of events, go to lots of networking in London, and just the next best thing, I was like, wow, let's try that. And I feel like it's coming back and doing a full circle again a little bit now. So it's been a massive transformation, I guess, in hospitality and travel over the last kind of 17, 20 years or so, watching everything grow, change, evolve, but also become more sophisticated. So a lot of those channels are much easier to utilize and make it a lot easier for agency partners, but also marketers to get stuck into utilizing software, apps, etc. So there's been a lot, but over the time I've just been privileged to working alongside lots of different areas of the business. So worked in quite small companies. So really got to grips with even finance, people and culture, training, revenue, all that side to really see how that fits in. But a good spectrum of different industry and markets, such as high-end weddings, conferences, spa, dining, and then obviously most recently luxury travel. So it's been a journey, but a really good adventure at the same time.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a number of things I thought there as you're talking, and one of them you kind of called out is like back when it was very interesting and you're kind of learning to code and really getting your sort of hands dirty, and that's kind of coming back. It feels like a little bit with some of these new technologies and like really getting into the weeds of like how they work and testing stuff out. So that's really cool, and I love the transition from print into digital and kind of the things you learn that are the same across those two things and different, and the advantages of digital and going into the data and the performance element and just learning all that. I'm really keen to learn or talk about how that looks for luxury. But before we dive straight into that, talk us through a little bit more about the role you do today. Is that purely digital? And if so, what kind of channels does that cover?
Yeah, so today, purely digital, covering the elements such as website development and UX, because that's super, super important, the customer journey, but bringing that all together with the paid space, paid media, all of the different channels and involvement that's happening there. And for a company that's seen a lot of growth, that was very, very important channel to drive that growth over the last, especially post-COVID in travel. So very, very important channel, but as well as organic. So really trying to now move that forward as fast as we can with everything that's changing in that landscape at the moment. Always wanted to be ahead and not be behind. So always looking to test and learn, see what works, what doesn't, see how our audiences are reacting, but bringing all of those channels together. So from where they come in, what they're searching, all the way through to how their experiences happens on the website. How does that look? What works? What doesn't work? What's going to help improve to drive kind of the lead gen element that we have currently in the business. So super interesting. Still a lot of creativity in there, obviously with asset management, but also copy for advertising and on the site, design and UX. So it still is very data driven, and we can get a lot of information from our client base that we utilize to hypothesize, experiment, but also create different workflows that we need to for the customer journey. But there is still that element of creativity that we can get from ad copy, visual, video, audio, etc. So it's a nice balance to be able to do that, but ultimately trying to evolve the business to lead the way. One of the most important values where I am at the moment is positive impact and travel. So super important area where that is at the forefront of what we do. So we do obviously what we believe in terms of travel, and that's super high priority for us and for our clients. And that comes with educating our clients as well in that space, with from climate to animal welfare to communities, etc., and all the projects that are happening. So that's a really big area for us.
Yeah, that's great. Love that. I'm interested to dive a little bit more into the differences when it comes to luxury and paid. So you talked there a little bit about the importance of audience work and UX and things like that. And those things are important across everything. But what are the things that are particularly different within luxury, and how does that manifest itself in terms of how you manage the channels you just talked about?
Yeah, great question. So I guess more so with luxury and travel, which is completely different to how maybe an e-com product or service might look at it. So with luxury, it's not about those vanity metrics as such. It's more about the intent over the volume. So we don't want thousands of random clicks just to have those metrics look impressive. We're actually looking for the people that genuinely want to spend that high level amount of money on a service, so quality over quantity, because it's a very highly personalized experience. And also our teams are experts and they need that time to build the relationships with the clients, and therefore we need to limit that wastage. We don't want to be wasting budgets or time and resource on people that just don't have that level or budget to spend on that high-end experience and service. So it really is looking at the right audiences to drive to our advertising, but also to our website as well. So that is the main thing, the quality for us.
Yeah. And how easy is that to do with just the limitations around like data and how easy is it to actually hone in on those people?
So we can obviously utilize our audiences and customers that we have currently, and that can help us understand their motivations, what kind of person they are, where they come from. So we can really hone in on clustering audiences and having segmentation that way to help us find that. But obviously we understand what sorts of clients we have, and that high net worth individual, really we can see where they come from, what they do, whereabouts. A lot of our main client base is in the US, so we can see locations and we go by state, have lots of information around that. But we also do an annual customer survey as well, which obviously gives us a lot of insight into that. We can see where people find out about us, and what's important to them and what's a driver. So we utilize that information and all the time to help us look for more of that type of client.
Got it. That's interesting. Probably a stupid question, but how much of a qualifier is the creative? Is that also something that's used to make sure that the people you're reaching are the right people? That feels like an obvious thing, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I think creative is, and the visual aspect is super important. It obviously showcases the brand, who we are. It also showcases uniqueness. So not just stock photography and the ones that you're seeing generally across all the other competitors. It really puts you in a unique place if we've got your own visual assets and the way you have the own style and messaging and tone as well. It really helps that come across a lot more, and is super important from my point of view.
Yeah, I think the thing that kind of comes to mind as you're talking there is like you're kind of having a conversation and building a relationship with people through media, whether that's owned or paid, and everyone's trying to do that. But you guys, if you're in the luxury space, you have to do that at a higher level and probably for a longer period of time, given that it's you've got to build that relationship with somebody who is spending a large amount of money. Is that a fair way to sort of frame it? Is that in that you are trying to basically build that relationship over time through those media assets and have a conversation with someone in an authentic way so that they can understand the brand, and then at an appropriate point then there's the self, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. It is a relationship and it does take time. I think especially with high-end luxury services and brands, you need that high level of trust, and you need to gain that trust. And once that trust is gained, then it's a lot easier in terms of them being very comfortable with the service, and they know the expectations, and they've also hopefully been and tried that service once, so they understand the kind of level of expertise that's there, and then it makes it obviously that relationship's much easier moving forward. So it's gaining that trust, and that's the best element in terms of the building the relationship. And once that's there, then obviously it feels like family. And also it just builds over time. And for the expertise that we have within the teams, like building trips, which are completely bespoke and specific to that person, we have to get to know them to understand what type of experiences they're going to enjoy and what places and what to recommend. So that takes time to understand and fully know what's going to be something that's they might not have even thought of. So you have to maybe tempt them and persuade them in some way that it's going to be amazing. And then once it happens, it is amazing and very memorable. So this service, like Troll, it's very memorable. You remember the place, the people. You don't necessarily think of the hotel room. It's all about the experience, and that once it has happened, then that's such a memorable thing to have for people in their lifetimes. So yeah, definitely, I think the trust and building that relationship over time is super important. Definitely.
Yeah, that's interesting. Are there any other key differences between luxury and other sectors when it comes to media?
I think in terms of how we were speaking about time, definitely, obviously, that consideration phase is very, very long. Vacations that are 2-3 weeks, depending whereabouts we are visiting in the world, and not necessarily an impulse buy. So people are talking to family, friends, loved ones, getting their recommendations and referrals, and taking their time over it, especially if you're going away with your whole family and it's a really once in a life time moment. That's not going to be something quick. You're not going to click on an ad straight away and purchase. You're not going to scroll through Instagram and directly make an inquiry necessarily. You need to nurture that journey over time, not rush them, and really fully understand what their expectations and needs are, and do that, exceed those expectations as well as much as you can. So I think that's one of the main differences. But another one to touch on has to be with the messaging. So with luxury, you're going to stay true and unique to your proposition. There's not necessarily any discounting messaging. So book now, save 50%. They want to see expertise. They want to see the exclusivity, and just your unique values to your brand. And that's why I know that you're worth the time and the budget, and it's not all about who's the cheapest option. So I think that is a main difference as well in the space.
Yep, got it. The time element's really interesting. I imagine there's not too much of an issue with like buy-in around time and some of those other metrics you look at in the interim when you're trying to judge a campaign success. But do you ever find yourself having to have those discussions where it's like, this isn't a performance channel that's going to perform in a week's time. This is a channel that's going to take time, and this is the metrics we look at during that, this period of time, and this is the metric we look after this period of time. Is that generally an easy conversation, or is it still sometimes difficult to get buy-in from other people, internal stakeholders when it comes to those campaigns?
I think the campaigns are fine, and generally we're focusing on bottom of funnel with paid. So we do see results quite quickly. And there's obviously lots of conversations around location and time of day when people might be looking at travel. What else is going to affect the peaks and the troughs of the campaigns, but also what's that targeting we're going for the luxury market, not necessarily people that want to go on one-day trips or sit on the beach to all-inclusive holidays. That's not the market we're in. So you have to be super specific, because some of those keywords could actually be the wrong keywords targeting for. So I think in terms of conversation with internal stakeholders, that's fine. I think for us, it's more what is our target market, what are they looking for, and not to open the bucket up too much and be too broad. And there's lots of different ways where we can test and learn, but also it's to do with capacity within our teams, making sure that we're still able to provide that high level of service to the customers that come to us. So we don't want an overworked, busy team. So we will pull back if we need to and push on if we can. So depending on our sales team and their capacities, then obviously we make sure that we're still able to maintain that high level of service throughout as well.
Yeah, got it. If you can share, what is the bottom of funnel conversion action? Is it a phone call you're optimizing towards, or a lead form, or some other action?
Primarily an inquiry form on the website. We do have phone calls as well, but primarily it's to our site to complete an inquiry form is our conversion metric that we're looking at. But there are those options of phoning that is available on our site as well, but primarily it's for the inquiry form.
Got it. You mentioned the element of broadness and keywords, and I think it's very interesting, and I imagine it's a particularly interesting challenge to think about how you use things like broad batch, AI Max, Performance Max in a world where those tools are designed to go broad in some sense. But you kind of are in a space where you need to think about the specificity of audiences to a much greater degree than anybody else. How do you manage leaning into those products and taking advantage of those products while still maintaining those kind of guardrails?
Yes, it depends. It changes. Any new tools that come out definitely needs a learning phase, and not just that worked for that region, let's roll that out to the other. It definitely is. There's differences between them. Works for some and not for others. So there's definitely a way of phasing the approach to what we need to do, especially with new tools like PMax, for example. It is more of a slower approach and phased approach to it. So we definitely do a lot of testing and learning before bringing that out to the full account. And obviously with a lot of destinations, there's a lot of campaigns. So the account is quite large, but also they react differently to all of these tactics. So it depends, but it's definitely a phase approach. Don't go all in straight away. It's definitely be a little bit cautious, test and try, see what the performance is, and if it's working, expand out even further, and keep pushing it. But obviously we've got seasonality in times of when everyone's actually out on travel, but a lot of people do look at their next trip when they are traveling. But so we obviously have all those big booking peak times as well. So that will change across the year, across all of the campaigns. So it depends. And we also have obviously places which are super popular and they're always in high demand. So that can change how we utilize all of the different tools, and if we need to use them all as well. But definitely I think in travel and luxury it's more of a test and learn and start broad, but then start to narrow it back again, and be really specific on the targeting, and that really helps.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I guess there's no other reason for you not to lean into these products. I mean, especially something like PMax or Demand Gen, because they have that higher visual element, which is great for luxury. It's more just making sure that those audience controls are in place. So that makes a lot of sense. How much are you leaning into video, both like organic and paid, short form, long form? Like how do you think about those?
Yeah, definitely high priority this year. Obviously having unique visual footage, audio, etc., takes time. So definitely been building that library up in those types of media formats. So definitely a big area for us this year, something that's been working on in the background anyway, and really could help just give that visual element, because it can really help to tell that story and show exactly what that experience might be and give a bit more of a flavour and idea. And I think it's obviously more digestible and easy to look at. So definitely something that's going to be exploding and expanding a lot more this year, and always super interesting to get into and bring to life as well. So yeah, super important.
Yeah. And we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier on, but how much are you, or kind of what's your view on how to approach the AI tools when it comes to like image, video creation? It feels like that world is moving so fast. 12 months ago, I think a lot of people saw the demos and were like, okay, there's some weird stuff going on here. That's not quite anywhere near ready for anything, yet alone luxury. But it's getting better so fast. Are you kind of keeping a close eye on it and then, dipping a toe, or how are you thinking about that technology?
Definitely keeping a close eye on everything. I would say that, it's always useful to see how these tools are working, what they're producing. But from a luxury point of view, just staying true to the brand and what works for us. And I think being unique also is a standout to the customers as well, in terms of how we would differentiate ourselves from other travel companies. And the more unique you can be, and the more first-hand kind of footage from our own specialists on the ground is going to showcase what we can do a lot better than necessarily something AI generated. I mean, I think even a few months ago, I saw some things. It was like, you just wouldn't use that image. But it's, as you say, it's evolving so quickly and now becoming much harder to tell the difference. So I'm sure there'll be things that will come out over time that will be interesting to look further into as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I've had so many conversations around like where it slots in, and I think the general consensus is that even when it gets to a stage where you could be using it, you still need someone on the other side who is able to, control inputs and sort of make sure it understands the brand, and then have that sort of creativeness around the inputs to create something that's genuinely like good, but also brand, that aligns with the brand.
No, I think so as well. I think if you align it with copy and messaging, you need that knowledge and expertise from those specialists and expert content team. The same way as visuals, they need to understand the brand, understand the messaging, the propositions, and relay that in a visual format. So you do still need those people on the ground controlling that and pulling the right levers that's needed. So definitely.
Yep. I think one thing, I don't know if this is a stupid observation, but I think a lot of the things you're talking about, I'm like, this is actually important stuff for every advertiser. Like knowing who you are as a brand, making sure you differentiate, having conversations with customers. I get with luxury, it's harder because you're going after a smaller pool of people. It's a higher price point. And you have to work harder as a brand to make sure you are differentiated and that the brand's understood, and the brand makes you feel something. But I feel like every advertiser, everyone should be aspiring to achieve a level of that. Because if you're not, even if you're not in luxury, you're going to struggle. And I think that's becoming even more obvious with how easy it is, or how easy it used to be to set up a website and sell stuff. And now we're getting to a stage where actually, I'm talking maybe Google Ads. It was easy to set up a website, sell loads of stuff on Google Ads. Now you can't do that as easy because it's so competitive. You've got to think more about differentiating in the brand and what you're doing in and around Google. So I think this conversation around like brand and the importance of brand is taking place more and more. And just all the things you said there about luxury, I'm like, well, they're all the things that everyone should be doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to say around. I mean, everyone understands now that there's not necessarily a linear way of all the touch points of a customer journey. It's now that messy middle as such. So you have to keep the same high level, I guess, way of approaching all touch points. And it's not just one that's going to be the success. It might be the starter or the way in for the customer, but all of the others need to have that same high level approach to them. The testing, the learning, they all need to be consistent, and because they're all probably going to be touch points for a customer at some point. So it just needs to be very cohesive across all those channels in order to be successful. And also within being with all the expertise that you have with the travel specialists and within our team, that authenticness and specialism and expertise comes out naturally because of the experience that's behind all the teams in travel. That it's not just a cookie cutter, it's not just a generic way of expressing our brand. It's people that have been there, they've done that, they've got the knowledge, they've got the expertise, and that naturally flows out across all of our marketing, all of our campaigns, all of our conversations. And that is the one that's special. You can't get that from AI. That is from the expertise and years of knowledge. So
yeah, people still want to buy from people.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay. Last question for you, and this might be actually something you've already touched on, but what kind of changes within the industry are you keeping an eye on the most?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I know, you don't really want to say AI, do you? the big topic, but I guess, yes, AI and automation. So this is, as we mentioned earlier, super fastly evolving in this space, but you've just touched on how luxury customers expect that human element, touch point. They want to be made to feel special. They don't always necessarily want to be talking to chatbots and virtual assistants. So we're constantly looking at how to balance that, where we can be smarter, which is where we could get some maybe AI efficiencies and automations in, but also where can we have those personal touch points and really elevate on that aspect as well. So AI is something that I guess, yes, definitely, especially with AI mode rolling out in the US, AI overviews and everything coming to pace. That's definitely something that's on the agenda all the time to make sure that we are using it in the right way, but also, making us be smarter, I guess. So it's definitely keeping everyone awake. A lot of interesting conversations, debates. Someone said this, someone said that. So it's good to keep on top of things and see the opinions that are out there in the industry, but also making sure, you shouldn't, especially in the luxury space, you don't want to get left behind. So you need to be at the forefront and constantly evolving, trying new things and seeing what works specifically for your organization. So it's definitely hot topic. Everyone's talking about it all the time. Everyone's always posting great insights and articles that they come across. So, and it's also changed so quickly since the beginning of the year. Definitely seen that jump. And so it's wondering, wow, where else is this going to lead us? So it's super exciting. Similar to 15, 20 years ago when we were, that was all booming, the digital space and traditional. So I do feel like it's a very exciting time at the moment, which takes me back from my beginning of my career, which is, super interesting to see how it's going to evolve. So that's definitely something that delving into a lot more to see what would work for us.
Nice. That feels like a great place to end it. That's a great line.
Oh, thank you so much.